in all Joe Schmidt's game plans, the kicking game is very important, and it was very disappointing. It was, Johnny didn't have his best game. I think, which we all identified from relatively early on. He wasn't on it. The communication wasn't there. It wasn't going his way. But we have to be able to kick contest. When we've been successful, we've gotten our kicks back or we've squeezed pressure. That seems to have vanished from our game over the course of the Six Nations. So that's definitely an area I think needs big fixing. And those power plays, we saw a couple of tries, Keith Earls against France, we saw Jacob Stockdale against Scotland. But power plays are going to be pretty difficult to cut teams open in really greasy conditions. Rain and mud is a leveller, where wingers all of a sudden don't have that turn of speed against, back rowers or front rowers, where it reduces everyone down to a similar sort of level. So it becomes about who's up for the fight, and Wales weren't lacking in motivation for winning their third Grand Slam in Gat's tenure, and the confidence that'll give them bringing into the World Cup. So I think there were. All's not lost, but I think there were definitely some really disappointing aspects to what happened at the weekend, and from a selection point of view as well.
Just on our kicking game, did Joe Schmidt leave our halfbacks on too long?
Probably. It's a tricky one because both of them are not playing anywhere near the level that we're used to. Connors seems to be trying to play his way through an injury. I don't know. He's the only one that really knows how much it's bothering him. Johnny's definitely had a dip in form that I don't think he's encountered in his career previously. So it's trying to give them the confidence to be able to play through that, but then don't cut your nose off to spite your face. You've got to be able to look at the bigger picture of it's not working for the team, therefore we need to bring in some fresh faces. I do think that if Joey Carberry was on the bench, he might have been introduced a little bit earlier than Jack Carty. It was only his second cap. He's a nice player, but he's not Joey Carberry. Conor Murray, again, it's similar. Even though Kieran Marmion's played well for Connacht in recent weeks and has never disappointed for Ireland, there's still a gulf between the two. So I think Joe's trying to give him game time to be able to get that confidence back, which just doesn't seem to be coming. So the only alternative now is that he gets a break from it like everybody else and goes back to his provincial team, and hopefully he gets a bit of rest time or whatever's necessitated to allow himself to be close to 100% fit come World Cup time.
When you say there that Johnny Sexton's never encountered a dip in form like this, how low is this and how low has he previously got to this? Has he been anywhere near this ballpark in terms of a dip in form?
Not consistently over the course of a 2-month period. Like if you go back to when he picked up his injury against Munster, he didn't have a good game. I don't remember the games before that in December. None of them stood out as being poor games. So ultimately that was a marker for Johnny didn't play well. He was captain, he lost the head a small bit. Then he had a big period out, didn't play great against England, and then didn't play particularly. He played fine against Scotland for 20 minutes that he was on. Actually played well, drew them in, took those hits, did the necessary. So had the makings of a good game before he was carted off. Didn't play great against Italy. Played better against France, but not quite to Johnny Sexton standards. But then a disappointing game against Wales. So for him to fluctuate up and down like that is very unusual. He kind of has a baseline standard of pretty good quality of kind of 7 out of 10 is his baseline, and then all of a sudden he's having a bit more of a fluctuation, and this is new to him as much as it's new to all of us. I've never seen that over the course of the last 10 years since he burst onto the scene. So I'm sure he's battling with it a small bit in his own head, and his coach as a result is battling with the fact that his most important player is not firing for him.
And that's the thing. And like you look at the restart that he put out in the full that everybody's talking about from Saturday. Ireland get a penalty a few minutes later to kick it into touch. Conor Murray takes the kick. Now Sexton may have picked up a little knock. We're not sure, but you do wonder if there's a confidence issue underlying all of this, and he usually is a guy who's so determined, who's able to pull up that performance again. As you say, he hasn't encountered this before. Does he have the reservoir of confidence to turn this around?
Well, like if you think back to the confidence that it took to knock that drop goal over this time last year or 13 months ago, like he also had the wherewithal to know that his team was going to knock the ball on in the next 7 or 8 phases if he didn't pull the trigger, if he didn't fire a shot. So he does like that pressure, but when things don't go for you, maybe you go into your shell a small bit, and maybe you don't want to take on the the bigger decision or the more stressful scenarios to find yourself in. One thing that I found very unusual, I know Ireland do it an awful lot, in going to the corner and backing themselves in their maul, but I think it's an error if they think going into a World Cup game, a World Cup quarter-final against South Africa or against New Zealand, that if they're 5 or 7 points down, that they can't keep the scoreboard ticking over themselves, that they can go for 7-pointers and get them the whole time. I don't understand why they turned down the 3 points when it was 10-0. Get something on the scoreboard, build your confidence that way. You go to the corner, you get turned over in the maul, and they relieve pressure, and that's a double whammy. You've obviously coughed up, given up 3, but also you've given them a big shot in the arm of confidence that they're well able to match anything you throw at them. So I think they definitely have to review that policy. It might work for you in the lesser games, but against bigger and better opposition, you'll be regretful of it. And sure enough, they were.
Yeah, like the thing that Joe Schmidt is obviously so well renowned for is his ruthlessness when it comes to decisions. We saw it with Sean Cronin a couple of weeks ago. We saw it with Sean O'Brien. It lasted less than 10 minutes of the second half on Saturday. And that's why I asked initially, should they have been taken off earlier? Like, do you think and I know it's a big if Johnny Sexton's form continues to stay at a fairly low level going into the World Cup, can Joe Schmidt actually make the decision to say, listen, Johnny, you're coming off and Joey's going in?
No one's irreplaceable. No one. Johnny Sexton included, Conor Murray included. You can't... You've got credit in the bank for delivering for long periods, but also, that only entitles you to a hiccup or two. And, if you don't get back to that level and someone else is capable of performing at a higher standard than that, well, that's an obvious choice. And Joe Schmidt's not afraid of that decision. What would be really interesting would be if Joey Carberry was fit next week, if there was a game, who would start? And it's getting, at the moment, it's getting to a place where you mightn't be fully sure. But I know the caliber and the person that Johnny is as well, and he will be beating himself up. But he will continue to back himself as well, and feel as though he can absolutely, pick himself up, pick his game back up, and start by, getting Leinster to a Champions Cup final and getting them to a Pro 14 final, and with successful teams, your confidence comes with that. So that's the only way he can go about his business. Continue working hard and try and get it to fit. And maybe a different voice. Maybe he needs to go back to Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster, and something that he can't see right now, that he just needs to tweak or change, or maybe needs to just chill out a small bit. I don't know. I haven't been in touch with him, so but I feel for him, because this is not Johnny Sexton that we've come to expect, and now he just needs to find a way to dig himself out of the hole.